Hello and welcome to this week's Running Tales podcast. I'm Craig Lewis and our guest today is marathon runner and running coach David Abbott. David only started running 7 years ago when he was 35, but within a year he'd already hit the qualifying time for Boston and has gone on to complete several sub-3-hour marathons. The American has also started coaching in Japan, where he now lives, and has gathered a popular following on Twitter, where he goes under the moniker Mr. Slow, Easy, Comfortable, a reference to his dedication to the mantra that long, slow runs can make you faster as a runner. I spoke to David about his advice for new runners, how strength training plays a huge part in his own running, and about how and why he has gained such a strong social media following. But to start with, I asked David about how he first discovered running.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I was so I live in Japan and I was home in the US visiting in 2016. And so my mom's a big runner. She's very involved with her running club. So I went to a social function of hers, with a bunch of runners. And I was talking to them like, wow, these people are really nice. I should join a running club when I get back in Tokyo to, just kind of make some friends or meet some people. I didn't really have like an intention of being a runner. I kind of thought of it more like socially, but once I started, I got hooked. So that was kind of my intro to running.
Yeah, and did you do a lot of fitness stuff beforehand, or was it sort of nothing and then I fancy doing running, or a natural progression?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very active in sports my whole life. So, I played in high school and college, football, rugby. I've done a lot of weightlifting, basketball. So I've always loved playing sports. And, even before I joined the running club, I was the classic run a 5K as fast as you can a couple times a week. So yeah, I definitely had the fitness background for it. So it wasn't too difficult to, I guess, transition into it.
Yeah, so I guess you went back to Japan and you thought, I'm going to give this running a bit of a crack now. How did that go? I mean, first of all, I guess, what is the running scene like in Japan? Because I have no idea.
Oh, Japan has a amazing running culture. There are so many runners here, so many races that are well organized, and yeah, it's a great place to run. The running club in particular that I joined is called Namban Rengo. It's a international running club, so it's maybe half foreigners, half Japanese. And yeah, so my I guess my progression for running is the running club has a Wednesday night intervals. And, before that, I had never done interval training. I'd never done really anything other than run a 5K as fast as I could. So what I found is that after like a couple months of doing these weekly intervals, my 5K time, went down by like 90 seconds or something. So I got hooked very quickly on the progress I made, especially on my shorter distance.
Yeah, and did you find the community out there to be something that helped you with the running as well, and or was it kind of for you a fitness and goal setting thing?
No, yeah, it was great. I mean, I think all of the runners who I met through the club, runners are great just everywhere you go, and they were very supportive and saying, hey, you should do your first half marathon. So it was yeah, it felt like a very natural, I guess, progression into my running career. And I have a lot of good friends on the club. I've been with them for basically 7 years now.
Yeah. And what was that sort of love at first sight with running then? And did running take over immediately, or at what stage did it take over, kind of becoming your main sport? Because you've done all these other sports in the past and so on.
Yeah, so it's funny. I think, so I went through this progression, right? I just started out running intervals. I did, my first half marathon. That was a huge, I didn't think I was capable of that. And then I think really what the turning point was my first marathon. Because due to like an injury I had and some other reasons, wasn't able to really train for it well. And I compounded that with the classic runner mistake of going too fast. So I had this horrible experience in my first marathon of just it was so painful. But right after that, I was really determined to improve my time. I thought, oh, I can do a lot better than this. So I immediately, like that night, I signed up for another marathon. 6 weeks later, I improved my time by a little. I did some long runs, but I had really no idea of what, an aerobic base or what training was. So I think that was where I became obsessed with running, of just like that. The summer of 2017, I ran slow for almost every morning, like 1 to 2 hours, just really poured myself kind of into improving at it.
Yeah, I want to kind of get onto that in a bit because I know that's a big thing for you, the kind of running slow to improve your times and so on. But first of all, I just wanted to ask kind of where has the running career taken you? What sort of events have you done? What are your favorite events, and how's it all worked for you? Because I know you've certainly came up with some pretty fast times on that marathon now.
Yeah, I mean, so I've done 10 marathons total, one ultra marathon. I would say the highlight of my running career was probably the 2019 Boston Marathon. My first sub 3 marathon in 2017 qualified me for the Boston Marathon. So that was, I had never imagined that I was going to run any marathon, let alone Boston. So I think that was probably that's been maybe the highlight so far of my running career.
Yeah. Have you done Tokyo? Because obviously that's when people are looking at the big marathons. That's normally the one they come to
Oh,
last. But
I would, I would love to run Tokyo. It's a the qualifying for it's a 2:45 to qualify for men, regardless of age. And it's it's so popular. The lottery,
yeah.
you have like a less than a 10% chance of getting selected. So I've tried to enter it several times. So maybe one of these years I'll get accepted. But yeah, that would be great to do all of those, the world majors. I would definitely like to do Tokyo and the others.
Mm. So, David, the way we sort of came across each other was via Twitter because I quite often sort of look at some of the feeds you put on there, and you'll give kind of like coaching advice to people and hints and tips of how to improve their running. Was that something you just fell naturally into along the way?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because when I started my Twitter account, I made it run lift, run lift. It's just kind of the things I liked doing, running and lifting. And I didn't really have an idea of like what there would be an audience for, or what I thought I was going to talk about, dieting and I don't know, other whatever, anything related to fitness. But I found that when I was posting, running videos and things like that drew the biggest audience. And then especially the kind of the run slow message, people really gravitated towards that. So I didn't really have any expectations before. It just kind of all happened organically, I would say.
Yeah, and as we've hinted a couple of times already that your kind of big message on there. I mean, you call yourself Mr. Slow, Easy, Comfortable on the
Right.
feed as well. Is this sort of run slow to improve your running message? I mean, first part of that, the question I wanted to ask is kind of when did you realize that this was a good thing, and then secondly for people, how does it work? Because you tell your really casual runner, oh, if you run slower, you'll get a better 5K time or whatever, and they'll be like, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah. So part of it is, like a lot of people on Twitter, when they start, they have trouble maybe getting traction with an audience. And so my first kind of viral post was, I post a lot of these videos of me running, and it said, your running should look like this 80% of the time, slow, easy, comfortable. And I got like like 100 followers or something. So and what I kind of realized is that people really want that message to that it's okay to run slow, that they have like permission to run slowly and to to enjoy their running. I think that's what I didn't realize is how many people struggle with just slowing down and just enjoying their running. I mean, that's really it. So yeah, I've kind of embraced that. That's why I put, Mr. Slow, Easy, Comfortable, because I get so many replies, comments, DMs about people saying, thank you for telling me to slow down. And I say, well, you were the one who did it. You just, gave yourself permission. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, how it evolved.
Yeah, it definitely works as a mantra, really. I mean, with my running, I used to. You were talking before you got into the club about blasting out the 5Ks all the time. I used to run every run. The idea of going for a run was to go out and whatever distance you were doing, you'd run as fast as you could. That sort of, in my head at that time, for some reason, seemed like a logical idea, a logical thing to do. And of course, I was always getting injured. And I decided a few years ago to try and hit a target of 1,000 miles for across the year, which for some people is huge and for others is probably tiny. But the way to do that, I found, was to just go on a lot slower runs. And suddenly, by the latter half of the year, all of my times, all of my PBs were coming down. I hadn't been injured all year, and I was like, wow, who'd have thought that this was the panacea? And then obviously I looked and did some research and thought, yeah, everyone's been saying this, and I just didn't notice.
Yeah.
But why does that work? I mean, you obviously sort of preach this mantra as well. Why would that work? It seems like it shouldn't.
Yeah, well, again, I think it's funny because I was so green. I didn't know anything about running my first year. And after my second marathon, I was always upset. I'm like, I should be faster than this. And I remember on some fitness podcast, there was a endurance athlete, and he just said, run slowly, just run slow. And so, at that time, I just said, okay, I'm going to go out and run slowly, just like the guy on the podcast says, not worry about, pace. And I just focused on doing a lot. And I was running a ton that summer, like I said, maybe 8 to 10 hours a week. And it's just, when you do a lot of base building, your aerobic base, your capacity for it is almost unlimited, right? So that's really what it comes down to is just putting a lot of time into building your base. And then once you have a big base built up, then you can, add the speed on top of it. So I guess the best way to describe it is that, like use the analogy of like a house or something, or a foundation, is your aerobic base is this foundation that you build. And then, that's going to make you a faster runner alone. And then you put kind of the speed work on top of that to, get your best half marathon time.
And that speed work, I guess, that's things like doing fartlek or interval training, or adding hills to your training and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And my saying is, train all systems, right? So we're kind of total like aerobic development. So yeah, there are, weekly intervals. That's a staple of mine. Tempo runs. Putting in marathon pace sections in your long runs, and that's kind of the art of training, right? Is figuring out, when you do the faster running, the intensity of how much to do and when to do it, right? As your race approaches. That's what a lot of runners struggle with, is they do too much before they need it, right? And that leads to kind of injury or overtraining.
And I know the other thing which you really push and talk about a lot is weight and strength training.
Right.
How can that help runners? Because again, as runners, we're terrible. We just like to lace our trainers up, get out the door, and go for a run. And the idea of going to the gym or lifting some weights, it's like, oh no, I don't really.
Yeah, I think one of the main issues is that people tend to think of weightlifting as just muscles, right? They think, oh, you get muscles, and I don't need what do I need muscles for in running? But you get so much more from strength training, right? You're strengthening your joints, tendons, bones, ligaments, everything. It's weight getting strong or weightlifting is, I think, the number one exercise modality in the world because everyone can benefit from getting stronger, right? Not everyone can run. Some people should be, walking to start out or they have injuries, but everyone can benefit from getting stronger. So and then the other benefits from it, and like a better improved running economy, your increases your metabolism improves. So the way I see it is that when you build a strength base through weightlifting, that allows you to take more stress on your body through kind of increases in mileage or a base building. So I think that was one of the reasons I was able to improve a lot in a short period of time, was because I had been lifting weights for years before. So my body was kind of ready to do those high mileage weeks. I think if people don't have that strength base, that's kind of where their body might break down and they get injured.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking that, I think you hinted at it there, but you don't have to be like lifting some sort of huge weights like some of these bodybuilders in the gym? It's not necessarily about that.
Yeah, it's more about the weight. How do I say? It's respective to you. So it's whatever it is. It is good to lift, heavy weight, for example, maybe for you, which is 6 to 10 repetitions of your maximum. But, the thing with weight training is there are so many ways to go about it. You can use machines, you can use dumbbells, barbells. So it's just all about applying resistance, right? And then, moving with these movement patterns, right? Squatting, hinging, pulling, pushing. So that's really what you're doing, is you're just like running is a movement pattern. Lifting is you're training movement patterns as well.
Hmm. When you talk about these kind of things on Twitter, what sort of responses do you get? Are runners still surprised that actually weight training is part of it, or do we all sort of really know that but still don't necessarily do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my impression is that a lot of runners are open to it. They just maybe feel that they're lacking confidence, or kind of, where do I start? A lot of times I get comments saying, what kind of routine should I do? What kind of lifting should I do? They just, because again, you walk into a gym, you see all these bodybuilders, all these weights and machines, you don't know what to do, right? So that's, I think, that's the impression I get, is that a lot of people are actually open to it. They know that it's going to benefit them. They just don't know exactly where to start and which exercises to do.
And apologies if this is a bit of a huge question, because I know it probably varies on the person that you're talking to, but what are the sort of basics that people should start with when they're thinking about weight training?
Yeah, sure. So the most important thing for a runner is having a strong posterior chain, right? So it's going to be basically your back, right? Your back, your glutes, your hamstrings. That's where a lot of runners are weak. You have a lot of runners who are they basically they get a lot of injuries, maybe because they have weak kind of glutes or hamstrings, and causes, like tight hip flexors. So what's funny is the weight training that runners should do is the weight training that everyone should do. It's the same thing that the bodybuilders are doing. It's heavy compounds such as like squats and deadlifts. Those are, I think, the best places to start. And anything that targets the legs and the back are very good. Bicep curls, things like that probably don't need so much, but training the muscles that are going to support your running, right? That's really what they need to focus on.
Yeah. I know for me personally that definitely sorting out those sort of glutes, hamstrings really tight all the time, and also the hip flexors are something I have problems with loads. So that's definitely true for where I am at the moment.
Yeah, right. Again, it's everyone, because running running is a stressful activity, right? It's that repetitive stress. And what I like to say is it exposes your weaknesses. You know, if you have those tight hip flexors or whatever, it's running is going to show you where you're weak. And the way I think about strength training is it's an antidote to weakness, right? Wherever you're weak, it doesn't get improved. You know, like there's a lot of benefits with like stretching and foam rolling, but it doesn't address the problem. Strength training is what addresses the problem. So a lot of times when you have a weaker type muscle, it's something that can be fixed just through targeted strength training.
Now, one of the things I'm sort of aware of when we're having this kind of conversation about running is that, I mean, a lot of what we do is really about being inclusive, everybody running. And some people, particularly new runners, can get quite nervous or a bit scared about this sort of conversation. They're like, oh, yeah, David runs sub-3 marathons and he does strength training and he does intervals and he knows how to do this and that, and they'll get a bit like, yeah, that's probably not for me. I just want to jog around my park run or do 5K. But actually, I think the message is that this is good for you, whatever level of running you're at, and even and as well, perhaps especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the run coaching that I do, or kind of the philosophy, how I train and how I encourage others to start, is always start with a strength base. Is focus on because you know the thing about it's the same thing with running is your body will adapt to some new stimulus. So in other words, if you've never lifted weights before, you're going to gain so much muscle and strength in your first year of doing it. So it really is worth the investment of time to put into strength training, where just even like 3 months or something, you're going to see noticeable progress. So yeah, it benefits everyone. I mean, again, there's no downside to getting strong. There's thousands of benefits to it. So it's something that regardless, you don't even have to be a runner. It's anyone's going to benefit from it. Yeah.
Mm. And in terms of the coaching that you do, is that sort of, you do in-person sessions out in where you are in Japan, and I think you do some sort of online stuff as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I've coached a few people in person, and I've started recently coaching more people from Twitter. So I've started kind of promoting my coaching more. So yeah, it's something I really enjoy doing because as I've come along in my kind of career as a runner and had kind of coaching or help from runners more experienced than me, and learned a lot. I enjoy working with other people who are just kind of beginning their journey. So it's really enjoyable.
And so just give you a quick plug. Where can people find you if they think, well, I've really enjoyed listening to David talk about those top tips. I fancy checking him out a little bit more.
Oh, sure. Yeah, they can just visit my Twitter at run lift. So they can just send me my DMs are always open for anyone who wants to reach out. That's the only social media that I have nowadays. I keep it pretty simple. But yeah, I'm always happy to chat with people about where they are in their running.
Yeah. And in terms, just circling back of your own running, actually, it was one other thing I wanted to mention to you, because I think you've done some barefoot running as well. Is that correct? How did you find that?
Yeah, it's funny. So I about a year ago, I moved out to a kind of right by the riverside where there's a big park nearby. And yeah, I've always taken I have a very open-minded, experimental attitude towards not just running, like exercise in general. I love to kind of like try new things. So I don't know, just a few months ago, I thought, okay, I've got this nice big park nearby. Why don't I try running barefoot in it? And I kind of took a liking to it. It's really nice. So it's actually become kind of part of my routine now.
Oh, brilliant. So, I know the obviously the sort of Born to Run book, a lot of the barefoot movement comes out of that, doesn't it? But have you found that kind of helps you run more mindfully and then helps your performance? And I guess it helps you run slower as well.
Yeah, so what I would say is I want people should be aware that running barefoot or like running with the like the zero drop shoes or the sandals, that actually gets a lot of people injured if they're not able to that you need to, I think, do it very like gradually, probably like walk in those shoes first. So I think with barefoot running, I only do it on grass. There's no way I would do it on a road or hard surfaces. So I think it's great, if you live near some grass or you have some soil or like sand that you can run on. But I would say be very cautious if you're gonna do it, out on concrete or asphalt because I think it takes a long time for your feet or your body to adjust to it.
And in terms of your own running goals that you have now, what's next on the list for you? Is it more marathons or just get faster or?
Yeah, I think so I took a break kind of after Boston Marathon. I took about like a 2-year break. Part of it was, just with COVID, there weren't any races and I was focusing on weight training. So I think since I've come back and started running again last year, it's been more on really just having like a sustainable approach towards running. Is I want to run for a long time and stay healthy, because I think if I had any kind of weakness or deficiency in my training or approach before, was I sometimes I did too much or I pushed myself too far. So I've really I think that's been my main focus coming back is get better at training, for one. And then yeah, in terms of goals, I would like to my goal to maybe this year or next year would be to run like a sub 250 marathon. If I can do that, that'd be great. And yeah, otherwise just enjoy running. I don't need to achieve any times or any marks to be happy. I'm satisfied with the running that I've done so far. So everything that happens is a bonus, I would say.
Because I guess the one thing we've not really talked about is how running helps you in your kind of everyday approach to things, because I think it does help a lot of people. Is it become that integral to your life now?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, running is just such a great way to, I mean, there's so many benefits to it. I just think the resilience that it builds is huge. And it's just about instilling the habit of, I'm a runner, I'm going to go out and run even if the weather's not great or I don't feel like it. And you push through sometimes when you don't feel great. So it's a very rewarding activity, is just to be in the habit of running regularly. And especially with other things like trail running and the social aspect, running with friends. There's so many things that I get from it. I mean, I'm talking to you right now, right? I have a Twitter account and all this stuff. All of this is because running, right? Running brought so much into my life. So yeah, I just feel like it's an amazing sport with an amazing community globally, where you can connect with people. So I could go well past the time limit talking about all the benefits of it, I guess.
Oh, well, David, you mentioned the time limit, so it's probably a good time for us to bring this to a close with running, connecting people across the world. So that's pretty cool. So thank you so much for your time today and for joining me on Running Tales.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I really enjoyed it. It's great talking to you.
Thanks again to David Abbott for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast. If you want to check out David's Twitter account for more running top tips, then his handle is @RunLiftRunLift. Now, I also just wanted to take a moment to ask all of our wonderful listeners to take some time out to give us a review and a rating wherever you listen to this podcast. Positive reviews mean that Running Tales gets seen by a wider audience. So the more that we get, then the more people get to listen to the inspiring stories of guests like David. Also, if you want to see and hear more of our content, then please be content to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Running Tales Pod, on Facebook, where our page is called Running Tales, or to check out our YouTube channel at Running Tales Pod. Now, you can also subscribe to our newsletter, which is runningtales.substack.com, where you can find written versions of all of these podcasts, as well as articles on a variety of subjects from the world of running and our regular newsletter updates. Thanks as ever for all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you on next week's Running Tales podcast.